I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. On the program, do you prefer a minority or majority government?
I definitely prefer majority government.
I personally think a minority is good because it kind of keeps things in check.
I think a minority government is more balanced.
It just depends on who's in power.
But first, for more than 2 years now, the global pandemic has been the top concern of all levels of government in this country, providing us with weekly, if not daily, updates on the progress of the virus. But more recently, the attention has turned to global affairs, namely the invasion of Ukraine. But in spite of that, many people feel there are issues here in Canada that are being put on the back burner. So we took to the streets to ask Canadians what they feel should get more attention here in Ottawa. Our question: what issues do you feel are being overlooked in Parliament?
Well, the oil and gas, for one thing. I mean, people can't afford the electric cars. You know, so many can't afford them. So what are they going to do if they can't afford the gas for their cars? So I think that's a real shame, and I think they're going in the wrong direction. They're going way too fast, and they need to slow down and think about their citizens.
I'm not in Parliament. I don't know everything they talk about, but I'm impressed at anybody who serves, and I trust that they're doing their job.
Personally, as an Albertan, I think the transfer payment, equalization payments, is a total farce, given that, we're the powerhouse province in this country. I just think that it can be a lot more equitable to Alberta, for sure.
I would say, at large, the COVID response, I feel, is maybe not getting the attention that it needs, especially people who are unvaccinated are still required to stay in Canada. They're not allowed to leave in any way, shape, or form. So that's a little bit frustrating for me, and I'd like to see that change for sure.
I'm a climate change guy. I've been harping on that issue forever, and that's the one that's getting overlooked. I think that's more important than pretty much anything else right now.
Some more incentives for healthcare workers, current ones and future ones as well, to get an influx of people working. We need staff. So not only did the COVID drive people out of healthcare, we're also reaching a demographic where a lot of the baby boomers are leaving the industry. We've also switched over to a computerized system, so that also pushed a little bit of the older generation out. So now we don't have those mature nurses to pass on the knowledge to the younger the younger crew coming in.
Yeah, if you're trying to rent, you just can barely live to afford. You get $1,500 to $2,000 for a 1 to 2 bedroom house is quite insane to be renting, especially if you're trying to start a family.
Federally and provincially, we have a mental health crisis going on. You can just look around our community and you can see the folks that have fallen through the cracks, who are suffering. So we need, you hear it time and time again, we need proper housing and we need proper care. That needs to be addressed right now. It's been a crisis for too long.
I'm concerned about our health, yes. Canadians first. And look after your seniors and your most compromised people. You judge a country by the least fortunate, how they treat the least fortunate, do you not?
Well, it's really delicate, right? Because obviously there's a huge opioid crisis in Canada and in North America as a whole, the world as a whole, in fact. And I feel like that's always been overlooked, but especially now that there's social distancing in place and such strict requirements for the general public to follow, I feel like mental health issues aren't being looked at enough. I feel like people without homes aren't being thought after enough. I mean, that's already a tough enough situation as it is, but let alone sanctions that are affecting the middle class and upper class. I mean, the people at the bottom are really just getting ignored right now.
Overlook, I feel like it's probably the COVID issues right now. And then, I mean, the government's, from my personal perspective, I think that the government wants to try to make the people happy right now, so they remove the mask issues. So I think it doesn't help actually for the COVID issue. So we still have the COVID numbers increasing after everyone removed the mask. So I think it is still very obligations for everyone to wear the mask right now.
Well, everything is going up in prices, and you got the old age, ODSP, plus welfare. How are they going to cope with that unless they raise the money, cost of living? Because everything's going up from food to rent to gas, you name it. It's going up, but yet our checks aren't. And that, I feel, they're really overlooking after a little bit better than 2 years of the COVID.
Also, as always, I think the Liberal government has made promises to the Indigenous population and communities that feel like they've been brushing aside continuously as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've also mentioned like election reform in the past, and it's just there hasn't been anything. So I think that's like pretty important as well.
I would say there is a disconnect between what people really need and then what actions governments are taking, right, regarding housing specifically. Right, some of the actions are a step forward, but I don't think they fully address the issue as they should.
Clean water. Yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest one. Everyone having a voice and like being heard, everyone's issue should be taken, you know, everyone's issue is valid. So I think COVID kind of came and it showed us that, you know, everyone kind of just decided to, you know, speak up, and with all the protests. So I think that like now we should maybe come together and have a voice. And yeah, I would say that maybe being heard is probably a big one. Clean water.
Well, I think homelessness is one. Inflation, I don't know anybody who's not talking about that, and it's impacting their own life, their business, whatever. So I'd say, how do we control inflation? I don't think we've seen this rate of inflation in decades, probably. So I think it's going to be a challenge.
The environment, that was supposed to be such a big thing for Mr. Trudeau to take care of climate change and all that. It's basically fallen to the back burner, not being talked about at all. What else? I mean, the economy isn't doing that great, and it's not just because of COVID. So I don't know what Mr. Trudeau is you know, if the pandemic wouldn't have happened, would he have done anything to make this economy a better one and make this, you know, country a stronger country? I would hope so, but he hasn't done anything since then.
The fallout following the trucker protests back in February may have shown us that all Canadians are not on the same page. Public opinion over vaccine mandates or political tension between the East and West has left many Canadians divided. We took to the streets to ask Canadians what it would take to give this country a more cohesive existence. Our question: how could we make Canada a more united country?
We need good leadership at the federal and provincial levels to help us get there, to be at a more united country. How do we achieve that? A little patience, and I think folks need to educate ourselves. Everyone has an opinion, myself as well, and sometimes my opinion is not right, or you don't really know what you're talking about, and so it's important. We have to educate ourselves, take a moment, step back before reacting. And that sounds very wholesome, and it's at a very low level, but you know, it's a big picture and it's a big problem.
People have made the choice to make that divide. It all boils down to that you personally. We have made that choice as people to divide. I haven't. I have people who are great friends who are anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. And like I said, I worked in healthcare, ex-military. I'm in a mask. I'm fully vaccinated. I'm pro-vax. So I mean, it comes down to a personal choice to make that divide.
Oh my goodness! Remember that this is the best country in the world, and wake up every day and thank your lucky stars you live here. Maybe that will bring us together, and stop moaning and groaning and fighting amongst each other, and I'm more Canadian and anti-vax. You know, like, it's just horrible. I don't want to be like the States.
Well, I think the East-West division is probably the biggest one that needs to be addressed, and quite frankly, I don't know that it can be. I think that there clearly have been, over the years, provinces that have benefited more than other provinces from the Union. And at a certain point, some of the provinces just get fed up with being on the wrong end of that. So it's a tough one, and I think it's going to require a lot of listening on behalf of both. I say both parties, but both sides. Let's say, because there's a lot of parties.
I think Canada needs to focus on Canada. I think Canada has a tendency to focus a lot on everybody else and doesn't look at itself too often.
I think we should focus on like more of the important issues that like unite us rather than divide us, you know, like housing reform is so important, but like we don't talk about it because there's like more of the, more divisive issues, like, like vaccinations, I guess. But like those are the things that like people are most affected by, right? So I think our parliament should address those.
Yeah, I think the framing of certain problems right now can be very polarizing, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think it's always about like the public good, right? Public safety, public awareness, public well-being.
I think our problems are maximized and our solutions are simplified. So there's a lot more that connects us than divides us, and we really just need people to focus on that, right? A lot of the wedge issues, it's not important to, or it's not the main drive of the majority of the population, right? So if we can have somebody who just focuses on what is a broad issue for everybody, it's going to be a lot more productive.
I feel like we can all relate to each other. Most of our cities are essentially set up the same. So maybe finding like community within the unity, and I think that might help bring us together.
Yeah,
I feel like we're pretty diverse already, so, just coming together.
Yeah, it's definitely like a melting pot. Like, I'm an international student, right, and I feel like if people like embrace each other's cultures and saw people as people rather than the other, and like seeing people as individuals having inherent value of just being individuals.
We're torn apart by seeing families in schism over things like vaccines or the truck convoy. I mean, in my 70 years, there just wasn't that intensity of division. And, again, I'm not saying anything we don't already know, but the amplification of social media and just our general culture in the West of individualism, I don't know how to turn that around.
I think it's probably to be a little bit more, I would say, to communicate better between, and I will say between, probably in my case, French and English, like probably to know each other a lot more. I'm here, I talk to people are really nice, they're nice where I am also, but what we hear a lot from sometimes what comes out in the media, and when I say that, I'm not the type of person who goes like, oh, media, they're the reason because of this or that, but we only hear about the negative, and that's everything about news, right? But I think we should focus a lot more on the positive sides of stuff. That would help a lot, I think.
I think that a new leader might be a good idea. Yeah. I'm going to be frank about that.
Separate. No, I think that there should be a separation, probably, for sure. However, you're talking to a guy who still doesn't know that much, so.
That's a fair answer. Like separate. Would you like Alberta, or is there?
I don't know. Maybe it's a. I don't know how we can be united, but it doesn't seem like we can. So, it's like America. How do you unite a place that's so big and so different, right?
We need to be able to see ourselves as Canadians first, less as liberals, less as conservatives, and we need to, and our governments, our politicians need to see that that's how we blend together as Canadians. That's how we promote peace in the world, is by listening to the voices of those that have a different viewpoint than us. And we need to stand for policies that unite us together and not try to be always fighting with one another as to what's this and what's that, or whether this is right or whether that's right. There's a right and a wrong, and that goes beyond politics. We have to stand for what is right.
Who was the last Prime Minister not born in Canada? John A. Macdonald, Robert Borden, or John Turner? Macdonald, Borden, or Turner?
Borden? Borden. Not sure.
I'd say McDonald just because I'm Scottish. What can I tell you?
Borden?
Turner?
John A. Macdonald was the first one, so maybe Borden? Gotta say Borden.
It's Turner. John Turner.
It is John Turner, sir. Very good. You may high-five each other. In total, 4 Canadian Prime Ministers were born outside of Canada. The first was Sir John A. Macdonald, followed by Alexander Mackenzie, Sir Mackenzie Bowell, and John Turner, the last Canadian Prime Minister to hold that distinction. John Napier Turner was born in Richmond, Surrey, England on June 7, 1929. Following the death of his father in 1932, his Canadian-born mother moved the family to British Columbia. John Turner was Canada's 17th Prime Minister between June and September 1984. After 2 long years of a pandemic, many restrictions are now slowly being lifted across the country, which include mask mandates and public gathering limits. While this may be good news for many people, others may feel we're acting too soon on easing up on their precautions as COVID numbers continue to rise across the country. As we continue to navigate through this 6th wave of COVID-19, we took to the streets to ask people if we're moving to get back to normal more quickly than we should. Our question: were COVID restrictions relaxed too soon?
I think the decisions that are made by our PHO are always based on science, and I think that is where we have gone since March of 2020, especially, in the setting that I work in, and we take our guidance from the PHO, and that's all based on science. And so, we have taken measured steps as far as I am concerned, and I think now just because you can't doesn't mean you should. I'm speaking personally. So in terms of mask wearing, we're outside. It's a beautiful day, but my husband and I will continue to make the choice of wearing our mask because we feel that's right for us.
It's about the right time to remove the restrictions and back to a normal life, I think. I think people are fed up with what's going on, and I think freedom is important.
We still wear our masks in some places. Just because I do get scared about the pandemic. There's still a fear element, I feel. We're vaccinated. I think that's important to get vaccinated, but I also understand that it's a personal choice. I think it's scary for people that are like immunocompromised and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a wrong or right answer for like, did they too soon or not? I don't know.
Well, I work in the music industry, so I feel like from my perspective, from a business perspective, my industry is back open. So I feel like it's a good thing that the passports are gone because it's less pressure for the venues. There's less management at the door. But I still wear my mask when I go to the venues and help run shows because I feel like personally it's a little too soon to get rid of the mask mandate.
No, I think we have to live. We have to learn to live with it. It's part of our world right now. It's probably not going to be the last one. We'll probably see more epidemics like that. It's obvious, but we have to learn how to, support our own selves.
Yeah, I think that the government should really be more cautious. You see the cases are rising. I was just talking with a friend who told me that one of his best friends just passed away from COVID. So I think it's being taken too lightly right now.
Well, I mean, the increase in cases certainly says that maybe they were, but I think the metric should really be the hospital capacity and our healthcare system, right? So as long as that's not stressed, I'm not stressed.
No. I feel like if we look at like our neighbors as an example, there are certain states like Florida that never shut down. And yeah, they were wild, but their economy didn't get hit as bad as ours did. I think that, everything should have been maybe targeted a little differently or treated a little different. But I think that the restrictions really hurt our economy and it hurt small businesses like mine and like a lot of other people. So I think that everybody should be cautious. But yeah, I think that it's time that we learn to live with COVID because it's not going anywhere.
I work in a hospital in Ontario and have seen COVID from a different lens, I think, than a lot of people have. I don't do direct patient care, but I do work in patient flow. And I do feel the masks have come off too soon. We're seeing increased numbers of COVID of patients being admitted into the hospital. And they're predicting that it's going to get a lot worse as we get through May.
I do think COVID restrictions were relaxed a little too soon. We're from Ontario, and I'm a school teacher, and we're noticing a much higher rate of COVID infections, staff are off continuously, and we don't have enough supply teachers to take over.
I think they were relaxed right on time, honestly, like right before summer. Perfect. And plus, this is just me being a little selfish. Like I really don't like the restrictions that much. And now summer's coming, I'm like, perfect.
See, and also with that, I feel like there could be two sides to that, because yes, people also want to get out, but also when people get out, sometimes they don't take into consideration that we did have restrictions. So then I guess it can kind of go really wild with how people want to interact and stuff like that, which can also cause cases to come back up again. But I think it's just something we're gonna have to live with anyway.
I don't think they were relaxed too soon. I think everybody needs to go back to normal at one point. Otherwise, like, people are going to revolt against government or things like that, because we need those little, things in life, little things we like in life.
I think they were relaxed too soon, and the reason is because there are now more variables. And we've done away with masking. I think we've set ourselves up for more COVID, not less.
I think they were not relaxed too soon. No, they were fine. My preference would have been a little sooner, but we're all a little tired of this. Everybody's going to get the damn stuff sooner or later. So come on, people. Let's get on with it.
History has shown us that a minority government often compels the governing party to work more closely with the opposition parties. The recent deal struck between the NDP and Liberals would buck that trend. However, a party with a majority can pass legislation with much less resistance and not worry about the matter going to a confidence vote, which could trigger another federal election. So we took to the streets to ask people what kind of government they'd like to see in Ottawa. Our question: would you prefer a minority or majority government?
Majorities tend to get things done a little bit more expediently, but I do believe that a minority has a little bit more power in terms of bringing up issues that may be overlooked. So I prefer a majority insofar as it is a majority as decided by the popular vote.
I think a minority government's probably better, just because, like, personally, I don't think any of the parties are really capable of leading this country, to be honest, given their leadership and their positions right now. So I think, like, it's not ideal, but I think a minority government it's more balanced and, like, more. For example, like, I believe the NDP got the Liberals to make some concessions on healthcare. So I think, like, it better represents the opinions of all Canadians rather than just, like, one party. So I think a minority government's good.
That's a tough one. I feel like as long as the end goal is to benefit Canadians, I think it's, it shouldn't be about who has more, who has less. It's about who has a better vision for the Canadian people, the citizens, and what's going to make us all, strive to be, like, a better us.
I really don't care as long as they're doing good for the people and other people in the world. Like, I get tired of all their sayings that they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and I don't know. I've followed politics since I was 16 years old, and they all promise a lot, but when they get in the chair, whoever's elected, they seem to, move away from that subject they were asked 6 months before becoming Prime Minister.
I would prefer a majority government. Why? Because a minority government, they're always straddling in the middle. Like, they can decide whatever they think they want to do, but it's not necessarily going to happen unless they have, more support in Parliament. So it becomes an unstable government, in my opinion, when you have a minority government.
It just depends on who's in power. But I think a minority provides a good opportunity to get things done and to have different opinions come to the surface. So I'm pretty happy with the way things are going with minority, yeah.
Well, federally, I would prefer a minority government, and because I'm really impressed with how the Liberals and the New Democrats are working together and focusing on real issues that matter to people.
It's healthy to have an opposition, but I think it's also healthy to have a government that has the power to implement the ideas that were voted in for.
I definitely prefer a majority government. I understand why people like a minority government in terms of a balance of power, but to actually make decisions and get things done, I think we need a majority government to get things passed and for this country to continue to move forward.
I'm sort of on the fence about both. I see the sides of both. Like majority may push it through to get more things done, more decisions made, but that might not be my personal decision or the decision of others. So I'm on the fence of whether I would prefer minority or majority.
I personally think a minority is good because it kind of keeps things in check. It doesn't give any one government too much power. I think sometimes I probably think a majority would be good if it was maybe the NDP or something, but right now I think a minority government's what we need.
I mean, I think right now it's kind of a moot point with the new government because it's essentially a majority now for 3 years because the NDP have agreed to go along with what the Liberals want for 3 years. In general, I prefer majority governments because minorities are hamstrung. They can't do anything.
I think more things get done under a majority government, and that's where we see more drastic changes in how things are run, and changes made tend to stick around longer than changes that don't get made.
Well, I kind of like the idea of a minority government because it keeps everybody more on their toes. Being a majority, you take things for granted. You can take the mandate for granted. You can take for granted that since I was elected to do such and such, I have carte blanche to do that much more. I think a minority government is excellent. I think it can be very productive and it can keep the government in check.
That's a good question. I really think I'm not, as far as I'm concerned, even if it's a minority government, and if there are, other partners who can nudge them into the right direction, I'm quite okay with that. Although I would like, because sometimes when there's the absolute majority for a party, that can be bad as well, because they will just take their party line and just serve a particular class of people. So I'm not that much against having a minority government with maybe one party or the other supporting them on particular issues, as long as they're going in the right direction, particularly for economy and particularly, for young people in terms of helping them.
I think for me personally, being an educator in this province for over 30 years, it's about the public good. And that's what we instill in our students, is really thinking about the public good. What is good for everyone, not just for one specific group of people, but something that's going to benefit all of us here.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.